Good afternoon, everybody, and I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for attending today's live webinar on tax flow workflow accelerators. We're going to be discussing how to import information into our Pro Series or Lacerte systems today and seeing how we can become a little bit more efficient as a CPA, EA, or accounting or tax firm across the country. I'm Jim Filicetti. I started my own tax firm about 17 years ago, and I'm thankful to have my team here with me today. And you'll see within the slides a couple of the functions and hopeful tasks that we would like to accomplish in our busy season here at our accounting firm. You can see that on the slide here that I do have contact information if you have any other questions or concerns after the webinar is done. At the end of the webinar, we'll have approximately 5 to 10 minutes of specific questions if you have any. Please do feel free to email me at anything afterwards, and I will promptly get back to you within 2 to 3 business days. I also want to mention that Tracy Anderson, who's on the call with us today, she does do live webinars on the Pro Tax Import weekly, and I think we'll get to some of that information at the end of the webinar today to where you can get more information on this, what I would call awesome add-on tool to our Pro Series and Lacerte programs. So with that, I'm hoping that everybody can hear me clearly, and if not, Zach, please chime in so I can correct my audio. Everything okay so far, Zach?
We may need to get you to go on your headset so that we've got some people who are not able to hear quite so good.
Is this better?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. So in saying that, I'd just like to go through this within the next 50 minutes or so, and like I said again, to leave a little bit of time for specific questions on how ProLine Tax Import works with Pro Series and Lacerte. So in saying that, what are we actually trying to accomplish within in the webinar? What we're going to try to provide you with is real tips on how to save time by setting up an optimum tax workflow, whether you're 1-person, 5-person, 10-person, 15-person, 20-person firm out there, as to how to utilize this tax import tool to make your firm much more efficient when it comes to importing information. We're going to walk you through the tax workflow we've established here at KJ Tax and Accounting to help our clients do more in less time. And by the way, we do have clients across the United States that are in this webinar that we've also helped out with this tax import tool. I want to welcome them to our seminar and our webinar today and see if we can help them out with these new features and the information that we're doing today. So the first thing that we really need to take a look at is what are we actually doing and what are we actually trying to accomplish during our tax season, and what are we trying to do to make our firms more efficient, to save time, and ultimately be a little bit more profitable with the client. One of our end goals as far as our CPA firm is concerned is we want to make sure that our clients are paying the least legal amount of tax possible and that we're adding value to themselves, their families, and their businesses when they're done with the tax returns here at KJ Tax. And at every firm in the country, we need to make sure that we have a procedure for receiving information. And at our firm, we have information coming in one of two ways. We have an appointment that we set up that has no information that comes in advance, and then we have client that sends or drops off information before their appointment date. And then we also have mail-ins, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So when we take a look at this, what we try to do here at KJ Tax is to make sure that when we do pre-schedule appointments, we're asking our clients to drop off, send, or portal our information even before we get to the appointment. It adds a lot of value to the appointment when we have the tax return 95% done at the appointment date instead of trying to get through the tax return and importing all this information and or entering the information at the appointment level. So, and it's according to what we did this morning in our meeting, the office manager, Bobbi, had indicated that we actually had about 20 pre-drop-offs before our appointments last year, which greatly helped us out in providing value and having the tax return completed before the client got to the office. Accelerator tip number 1. Again, I encourage clients to drop off the information or send ahead of time the appointment to maximize your efficiency. Processing information. What happens here is this tool is you're going to want to have some type of organized procedure to take on the information even before you get it up to the Intuit servers to have it imported into your tax return. So Bobbi, our office manager, takes that information and uses the Pro Series checklist. I don't know if you know exactly where that is, but there is a useful checklist in Pro Series now that you can either email or mass mail out that provides the client information in a check mark format within 1 or 2 pages of what they brought in last year, and they can actually check those off and put those in order before they drop off or send the information in. Lacert, I know that they have a short organizer and organizer. What we found out as a firm is that when we do send out a full organizer, our clients are getting through page 1 or 2, and then they sort of abandon the rest of the organizer, and we find that the checklists are much more useful in that area. Bobbi's also asking people, and we're reaffirming this in our year-end newsletter, to remove staples and paper clips from all the documentation. Now, whether that works or not is still to be seen. We've been seeing some success, but still there's other things that we still need to open and remove. We also have recount the number of documents that come in. And then we also have that person who's responsible for bringing in the information to observe whether it's a single or double-sided document. And then we also look for highlighted notes in yellow or whatnot, where they tend to come in scanning in black or we can't read them. And then we also take a look at handwritten notes and smudges and marks, et cetera, on that. So the next step that we try to take in this, actually we have a poll already, which I missed. So one of the questions that we have for the audience today is how many firms have adopted upfront scanning procedures? And if you want to just take 15 seconds or so to answer that and submit the answer, then we'll show you the results with our attendees today. So thank you very much for taking the poll. Did I submit it? Okay, so the live view of the poll results came back from our audience, and it seems to me that 40% of the firms participating in today's webinar do have upfront scanning procedures, which are quite important when we're using the Intuit import feature for either Pro Series or Lacert. And you can see there that the poll is showing 60% do not have upfront scanning procedures and may still be on a paper-based system where they may be scanning things in the middle of the process or at the end of the process. Accelerator tip number 2, the person scanning must be well-trained, organized, and logical. Poor input equals poor output. I can tell you that a lot of firms that we visited across the country over the last 3 years will go ahead and hire temporary help, and then the temporary help would be put on the job of scanning in the information. What typically happens there is they don't know what to scan, they don't know how much to scan, and they might overscan, and that might create a situation where it might not be as useful. If you do know, or you do have a person identified in the office that does know the client, that does know the documentation, and that does know how to scan in the appropriate information for the Intuit Pro, the Pro import tool, so it comes back a little bit better in the process. So with that info that Bobbi's collecting, she's scanning that, she's creating a PDF, and then she stores the document in a document management system or in a window structure. And then what she does with that is she then goes ahead and she sends that up to the Intuit server. And we'll get to that in a little bit as to what that looks like. So another tip here is that we want to make sure that we scan in the documents at 300 dpi. Most Fujitsu scanners, which I suggest are the best scanners to purchase. There are a couple other ones out there that do work well. A couple that e-file cabinet sells. I think they're called PlusTex, and there's also a couple other Canon scanners that may work. But you do want this Twain compliant scanner. I know that a lot of people do have scan snaps, and those aren't quite Twain compliant yet. And the reason why you want it Twain compliant is if it's not, you're not going to be able to store that into like a document management system such as like e-file cabinet or Docket. So you want to make sure that that's a Twain compliant scanner, that they're tested and proven out to be one of the best scanners. I know Intuit sells this type of scanner on their website, and it's usually under ProSeries.com or Lacert.com, where you can just go to the Intuit.com website and select tax to see what kind of pricing they have on this type of scanner. And then going on from there, what we need to do is we need to go into our program now, and let's just step back here. We already got the information in from the client. We already have it scanned in at 300 dpi, and we have it sitting in a document management system or a file structure. And now we need to get this information into the Intuit servers. And the way that we do that is we go into the program in Lacert and in ProSeries. We want to go to a button called Tools, and you want to go to choose Import, Tax Import, and submit the document. Now, I'm actually in the client file at this time. I don't know of a way in ProSeries or Lacert, and Tracy can jump in here, to do this from your home base or your client tracker or your client base in Lacert. So what we do is we definitely go into the actual tax program, and we go into the client, and we import from there, and then we send it to the Intuit servers from there. And that's where Intuit sort of does their magic and ties these PDFs into the tax return itself. Accelerator tip number 4. The tax import dramatically reduces the time spent manually entering data. From what I know, the system will import 17 documents: W-2s, 1089 interest, 1089 MISC, 1098B, 1090. There's the home mortgage interest. It's starting to scan in real estate taxes now on the home mortgage interest. There's some issues that you need to be aware of there, and it does a pretty accurate job of bringing it in. So if you can imagine doing 400 tax returns in your firm, and you're able to reduce the time spent on each return by 10 to 15 minutes of a return, that's 4,000 minutes divided by 60 minutes during the most busiest time of your busy season. You're talking a pretty good chunk of time that's usually in overtime or some type of time frame that you could be doing something else with that time. Going on from that, so I got the information in, I got it scanned in, I got it imported into a document management system. I opened up the tax return. I have it in the tax return now. And there was a couple things that Intuit and a lot of the firms that utilized this tax import tool last year that they improved on this year. This is our third year, our third busy season that we're using tax import, and we greatly appreciate and thank Intuit for taking our views and seeing what we can do here in order for us to improve our time and our ability and accuracy of the tax import. This was a huge change last year for us, and we really greatly appreciate it. We have a pre-import viewer that gives us control of the data that we see before we import it into the tax return. Also, what Intuit did is they reduced steps from 17 last year to 5 this year and this coming busy season. It does use a dual technology that reads the data twice. So what happens there, I don't know if we have statistic gurus out there, but statistically when you do something twice, you're going to get a better result as the end product in the import. Now, the tax import added other enhanced confidence indicator alerts to give you additional details as to why the field is highlighted. There was a lot of issues where things were highlighted last year in the tax import where simply we'd come up and say, why is that number highlighted in green? And we know that went somewhere, but we don't know exactly where. So they improved on that. And then Intuit partnered with financial institutions this year to receive the 2012 forms even earlier this year to program and test with the well in advance of the season. So probably the number one, if I would guess, the number one thing or improvement that Intuit heard from tax import firms using the product was the 1099Bs were extremely difficult for us to deal with last year on a scanning or a direct import method. And the reason why was, number one, the IRS changed on how those formats were supposed to be done in 2012, and number two, Intuit was trying to catch up with their scanning policies and procedures and making them as accurate as possible. This year they took a look at that, and there's some really good improvements coming your way on that. And then on the Intuit added the tax import view to the client screen to make it easier to see your import status. So that's another improvement where that wasn't there last year. This is really busy screen, and I'm not going to go over all of this, but what this is trying to show you is the pre-import review of what the information coming back from the Intuit server looks like from the import tool. So on the left side, you see that there's a whole bunch of imported items that are pre-imported into this client's tax return. And on the right side, what you're viewing is where we have specific individuals assigned to checking in this information before we go ahead and properly post it into the tax return. So depending on the size of your firm, we have approximately 6 to 12 people working through busy season at our firm, more on the heavier side, perhaps 10 this year. And we are going to have 2 team members that are non-CPAs and non-accountants to verify the accuracy of this information on the import screen before we import it into the screen. So what that does is it allows the CPAs and the reviewers to spend more time with the client and engaging in, remember when I started out the seminar, engaging in value-added services to them, their family, and their business. So that's really nice to know, because once this is verified, we're not really taking a look at this again, with the exception of a final review, and it saves us a lot of time as reviewers and CPAs, EAs, and tax professionals as to knowing that this is already imported and it was already checked before it got to our desk. Now, there's going to be an argument, well, I'm only one person or I only have a helper. This will also help the person that's a one-person shop or a two-person shop by allowing you to get a head start on the data import. Our statistics showed that it was about 92 to 93% accurate when it came over. When it was wrong big time. However, because we did review this before we imported it, we caught, I would say, the majority of the mistakes that were being imported into the individual tax return. I want to stress that we do keep count of our CP2000s and CP2005s, and we do about 1,100 tax returns total last year, and we received about a dozen CP2000s in regards to our performance on how we're doing the policies and procedures in our firm. So if you take a look at that, you can see that we do have policies and procedures in place to make sure that we can not guarantee, but we can be as accurate as possible with the information that we're receiving from the tax import. So moving on to there, once this pre-import review is done, you can see that when it comes back from the tax import, the beauty of this is that the majority of, well, all of the PDFs are bookmarked and organized. The pro to that is that you don't have to do that manually. Another pro is that they do highlight everything that comes into the tax return as green. Some of the improvements that we wanted to see Intuit make is, again, some of those green items on the PDF, we didn't know where they went, and we were guessing that they were in something that may not be affecting the materiality of the tax return. However, the majority of our viewers did catch those, and they corrected the tax return before they got out the door. And again, I have to remind you that that's usually anywhere It's a very small percentage as to when they import that as to when that's incorrect. You want to take a look at this as a tool and not a replacement for your preparers, because it's definitely not a replacement. You just can't import these things in and just assume everything's okay and then go to your final review and then e-file this. This is not what this is made for. What this is made for is a tool for you to provide more efficiency in the firm and to yourself to save time and money on preparing the non-essentials of what a CPA or a reviewer or a CPA really needs to get to, and that's making sure that the tax return is at the least legal amount of tax possible. But it does do a nice job on organizing and bookmarking everything. This financial institution download, there was significant improvements to this year, and we're looking at using the tax import exclusively, and we're looking at trying to scan in the 1099Bs and trying to figure those out on a manual basis. And this is where, Tracy, I believe there was a lot of improvements done on getting these documents earlier to available for tax import for Pro Series and Lacert. As far as I know, when I saw this being done last year, it is around 100% accurate when it does come in. The opportunities for improvement on this, though, is that we still ask our clients to send in the 1099B with their information because it's not available for us to print out from the website when we're trying to download this information. And Tracy, that might have changed, I'm not sure, but I still do believe that's the case. When we download information from the financial institution, we will not have access to the original 1099B for our supporting documents. Therefore, we're still asking our clients to PDF or drop off those documents for us. But this is a very handy tool, and I'm sure that with all the investments that are happening in the United States and with a lot of the clients that do trading a lot, this is a very large time saver if it can be done accurately, which I do believe Intuit has achieved with their new improvements on this tax import. There is a couple things that are needed. You will need the client's permission to access the account. It's a one-time access password that you would need, and after that, everything would automatically download into the Schedule B. Strike that, D like dog.
And Jim,
so, sure.
If you submit that information, you don't actually, if you have an agreement with your client that you can enter in that information, then you can absolutely do so. If not, feel free just to send that email, and they actually manually input in their own data. So they can just send it directly to you without you having to have any direct interaction with their username and password.
Okay, can you say that one more time, Tracy, for our team?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So whenever you're using that program, if you have an agreement with your client that they've given you their financial username and password, then you would have that agreement with them. If you don't, if you just send them that email, it's not necessary, because when you're sending them that email, they're actually logging in and entering in their own username and password, so they're not going to be giving you access to that. They'll just be sending that data directly to you.
Okay, that's good to know, and thank you very much. We do have another poll coming up, and I'll put myself back on the phone. How many firms have a document management system now that they actually utilize? That's the next poll here that we have.
Okay, so here we have sort of a opposite result than we had with the scanning process, and that is about 56% of the individuals are actually using a document management system, and about 43% aren't. So what this tells us is that people are scanning in information and they are using a document management system, but they may not be scanning all up front. And the reason why I ask this question is because now that we have a PDF that's coming back from the Intuit servers that's already bookmarked and highlighted, yes, there is still more input to do on the tax return, but we want to place this document in some type of document management system so we can deliver electronically to our clients the tax return and the supporting documents through some type of secure means like a secure drawer or another type of portal service that the clients can then get their information electronically instead of printing all the information and giving them back to the clients. So thank you for taking that poll. How many firms utilize an annotative PDF tool to tick mark supporting documents? So we use a product like TickTie Calculate to do that, and the reason why I'm asking this is because we pretty much are doing everything on screens now instead of utilizing paper to do that. So I'd like to see what the audience thinks of that. So here, much less. Okay, so there's 21% showing that they don't use annotative tools, or they do, and the majority, 80%, don't. I would suggest that you do take a look at annotative tools. I do believe Intuit Document Management System has a set. Adobe, there's a lot of annotative tools out in the marketplace that's an add-on to Adobe that you can best utilize, like let's say different colors for different preparers and reviewers. There's check marks, there's tick mark legends, there's work paper references, there's cross references that work on the PDF. So if you're on work paper Z and you want to cross reference that to work paper AA, you can certainly do that with those really cool tools out there for us to do and to review. Step 5, Bobbi creates a client folder. While we work electronically, we keep the source documents in case that we need to refer back to in our document management system. So that's really important. I know Intuit has one, and I know that there's others out there that if you're not able to, or if that's not a solution for you, there's others on the market that everybody's aware of. And you can certainly Google it or do whatever you'd like to do to see what's out there for those types of items for document management. On the documents are returned to the client when we complete the return, and by the time the folder is created, the data is usually back from Intuit. So what we're saying here is when we upload the information to the Intuit servers through ProLine Tax Import, we took studies as to how long this is taking to get back. And typically on the busiest days that we found, your average tax return, by the way, is around 17 pages that we upload and we download. That's a statistic that's sort of an internal generated statistic that we had across the country. And it's typically taking 3 to 5 minutes to get that back from Intuit. So it's not that long when you upload this information. It comes back down in a pre-formatted format. And then we do use the tax import column indicator to monitor the status of the data. Now I know in Pro Series there's a column that shows where the status is, and it has symbols. And you'll see that in what we call home base, or your place where you see all your clients. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology or not, but we use Client Analyzer or your home base in Lacert as well to see that indicator on there to see if it's back or not. And I might have a page coming up that shows that. If not, if you are using the tax import or if you do need more information, we can certainly show you that at the end, or see one of Tracy's live webinars to see where those those indicators are in home base. Then we also change the status from transfer to data received. In Pro Series, we utilize home base to track all of our workflow at this point. And Lacert also has a tool like that that I would consider using if you don't have a workflow accelerator like an XCM product or some type of workflow that would coordinate the status of the tax return with individually or throughout the firm. And those two home bases can be modified to your liking, or like I said again, you can go out and find a product like XCM to help you with your workflow through the firm. Accelerator tip number 5. Use the pre-import screen in Tax Import to review imported data against the actual PDF. That's a possibility too. So one thing that you can do is when you're in that pre-import screen, you can see the actual PDF right next to the actual imported data. So in this column here, we're looking at the actual information that's in the tax return. And right next to it is the actual information that was pulled off of the PDF. So if you wand your mouse over this information on the right-hand side, and you click on it, it's going to bring a magnifying glass up, and it's going to show you right on the PDF where they received that information from. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so how do we have this information in? We already have the pre-import all screened out, and we had now imported that in the return. We went ahead and updated our workflow, whether we're using Homebase or a product like XCM, to show where the tax return is, so the next team member would know where that is in the firm, workflow and how it should be done. Well, obviously, like I said before, this is a workflow tool. It's not a replacement for a preparer, and not all the data entry is going to be imported from this tool. So now we have to complete the data entry, and we need to review the data not imported. We need to compare the QuickBooks information. We need to do some type of review procedure to make sure that the information that's in the tax return is as accurate as possible, and that the CPA, EA, tax professional, or accounting professional can make sure that when they do get that in a review status, that they can analyze the two-year comparison, get on the phone, and add value to the client. And then remember that we need to flag missing information that a preparer may not be able to handle accordingly, such as a like-kind exchange, a bulk sale rule, some special depreciation issues, or something that they're not fully qualified to make judgment calls on. So there's, in the certain Pro Series, if the attendance doesn't know this, the missing data utility is a huge time saver for us, and is an excellent way to flag, collect, and communicate with clients who you have missing information with. This tool will bring up their email. It will bring up a link to where it's missing in the tax return, and we also utilize this to do internal review notes that we can clear to make ourselves much more efficient on missing information. I can tell you 7 out of 10 times when I traveled across the country and I met great CPAs, EAs, and then tax professionals across the country as to how many workflow sheets that I saw on top of files that got routed through firms because of missing information. And I also asked some of the firms to time a missing information worksheet through a firm as far as how long it would take for us to write that down, attach it to a file, pass it on to the reviewer, get it back to the client, have the client answer it, and then put it into the tax return, clear the missing data review note, and then waiting for more information and this and that. This tool standardizes missing information. So, for instance, if someone calls in and says, "Is Jim available?" and Bobbi is so kind to say he is, but he's busy adding value to somebody else's tax return at this point, how may I assist you? Well, I got an email from him saying that he didn't know when I paid my real estate taxes. Bobbi can then take care of that and say, okay, I'll update that Pro Series, and Jim will know that that's in there now, and I'll make sure that I instant message him that you called and that he'll take care of that and get back to you at a later time when he's available to get that tax return completed for you. So this is across the board. Everybody can see this. Everybody can answer it for you. Big time saver for everybody that has missing data. Now, a question might come up is saying, like, well, what if we have so much missing data? What should we do with that? Should we go ahead and scan that in and re-import everything into tax import? Our procedure is no. We go ahead and manually enter the missing information. And depending on your document management system, we actually can append or prepend that additional information to our scanned-in electronic data file or our PDF. So, for instance, we have a W-2 and interest income was missed and it was in the missing client data utility. We prepend that to our supporting documents so we have a complete set of supporting documents supporting the tax return. Once we're done clearing all the missing data utilities in the programs, the return goes to the reviewer. When all the information has been inputted or imported, all information has been reviewed, and then the preparer changes the status from sent to reviewer, and then the notes to the reviewer have been updated. And we use the missing client data utility to communicate review notes back and forth between our preparers, reviewers, and ultimately the CPA, EA, or tax professional in the firm that's responsible for signing the return. Then we go to the final review. I'll go ahead and, like a person as myself, I'll conduct a final review. I'll conduct research if needed. Now again, this year with the fiscal cliff, there's a lot of changes. Obviously, we're dealing with a delayed filing season already, so we can't really electronically file anything until January 30th. We can't file complicated tax returns possibly till March 8th, March 15th. And sometimes research is needed, and there is, coming up in the slides here, you'll see that there is a solution for you, and that's called tax research powered by BNA that we have utilized on, and we should be utilizing a little bit more, that actually attaches the research to the tax return for further clarification. We'll get to that a little bit later. So then we review the diagnostics in either Lacert or Pro Series. And then once that is finally reviewed, we change that tax status in our home base in Lacert and or Pro Series to reviewed. So here's another tip. Use that, I just mentioned that, there's a thing called tax research powered by BNA that's right in the tax return, and you'll see that when you go into your home base. You can just click on tax research, and it'll give you the power of BNA to find anything out there that's current, old, that you have a question on. Quick story, veterinarian came in and said, I went to China to study acupuncture for animals, and I want you to take that education and I want you to go ahead and take that off the Schedule C, because that was really something that pertained to my business. I said, have you done acupuncture before on animals? And he said, no. I said, well, that seems like that's a new profession for you. He said, I've been doing testing on animals and acupuncture for the last 15 years. I'd appreciate that you take that off on the Schedule C instead of using that as an educational expense, as a deduction, as a tuition. I said, well, first of all, we got a lot of complications going on here. First of all, it's in China. It's not in the United States. And he said, listen, just take it. And I'm just like, this is putting me on the fence. So what I did is I went out to BNA Tax Research, and I showed him the code as to saying that that's an appropriate deduction on the Schedule C, and I documented that in the tax return. Unfortunately, 3 years later, I did take the deduction, but 3 years later he came back with a CP 2000. He said, why do I owe Social Security tax, and why do I owe more tax on my 2007 tax return? And the beautiful thing about this was I went back to the tax return and I hit on the tax research button, and it showed me exactly where I had my tax research attached to the tax return on the Schedule C, and I said, it's because we took this deduction that wasn't allowed. That's the power of that. And everybody else, we can certainly Google and attach PDFs to our document management system, but this tool actually attaches it right within the tax return, which is great. So the final thing that we do is we actually go to the filing and billing. And now that the review is complete, we go ahead and use Intuit. We use Enterprise, QuickBooks Enterprise. We generate the client bill. We do utilize by form type charges in Lacert or Pro Series, and that's, some people use time, some people use, well, this is just the general average of a tax return. We have decided to do a per forms charge type for our individual returns. We call the majority of our clients, and we have a lot of them, and we try to discuss the refund or the amount due, and we try to give them accelerated tips for what's coming up this year, and we try to add value at the end of the process and spend more time on that. We go ahead and build a tax return out of QuickBooks, and we also use QuickBooks Billing Solution Merchant Service, so we can accept credit card, debit cards, or e-checks, which is an electronic check over the phone or the internet, and it notifies us when we're paid with the return. Once the bill is paid, we then go ahead and document that in our tax program, and the e-file is then returned. And then we go ahead and send the client's tax return via our secure portal. We do invest in a portal, and we do charge our clients, individual clients, to use our secure portal. The trade-off there for $10 is a year is that they receive 3 years of their tax returns PDF and 3 years of their support. So what that did for our firm was amazing. We don't get any more we do get phone calls, but on a lesser rate for individuals looking for refinancing or a copy of their tax return. Now they have their tax return out on the secure portal. We charge a technology fee to offset the cost of the technology advances in our firm within the pricing structure of our tax returns for both Pro Series Lacerte and the individual corporate partnership and estate returns. So that pretty much wraps up the complete cycle from start to finish in a very abbreviated format, obviously, today. So the last question that I have for the poll question today is, how many firms are utilizing a portal to deliver the final tax return and supporting documents? And we'll give that a few seconds here. We're running right on schedule, which is good. And I'm going to close the poll now. Okay, so sort of like the other polling question, we have early adopters and pioneers of about 18%, and we have about 82% that have not adopted a portal. I can tell you that at this point, I don't know how much more of it. I just want to back up and spend a little bit of time on what we're presenting here. If you're a firm that's not using tax import, and you so choose to do that, you're bringing what's called a disruptive change to your organization, and you really do need to understand that you need to buy into a onboarding procedure or policy when you're doing this. And any time you do make a change in your organization, it is disruptive, and other individuals are going to take change differently than other individuals. I adopt a change very well, and I like it. Some people don't like change, and you have to remember that when you do these, and you do have more than one person in your firm, that you have buy-in potential, and that you do assign a champion in your organization to address the change that is going to occur, because it is definitely a disruptive change. I wouldn't encourage making a substantial change like trying to go to a portal like this year, but what I would do is take maybe a battery of clients or a sample of clients this year and try it out and see if you can handle that and see the response that you get from them. So with the 15 minutes or so that we have left, I'd like to take a little Q&A. I'd like to go over these accelerator tips first, just so you have a reminder, and obviously you do have a copy of the PowerPoint at your disposal. The number one accelerator tip: encourage clients to send or drop off information ahead of appointments to maximize efficiency. I know that there's CPAs, EAs, and tax professionals that are attending this webinar that has been introduced to this concept, and I can tell you that the more organized you are for the appointment and the more ahead of the game you are to present value to the client that's sitting in front of you, the more time you're going to save yourself and the more enjoyable your tax season is going to be. Tax tip accelerator number 2, the person scanning, I would suggest, whether they're experienced or not, to be well-trained, organized, and logical. Where you have poor input, you're going to get poor output. Like number 3 says, garbage in equals garbage out. I know that Intuit has Fujitsu 6130 scanners made available on their website. Typically, you'll see a fire sale on those, that they're actually selling them at a cost that cannot be beat anywhere on the internet. They are Twain compliant. They're multi-fed scanners. They need to be set at 300 dpi, which they already come packaged like that, and scan only the original documents in black and white. One thing that what you're doing is you're uploading information through the internet. So if you want to slow your internet speed down, and you want to, the file size of these things are going to get huge when you use grayscale and color, and there's no reason to do that unless you have a specific reason to do that. The black and white 17 average page document that you're sending to Intuit should be around 700 kilobytes. If you try to push through your internet pipe, your upload and download speeds, 2 to 10 megabytes of information, expect results of being very, very slow to transfer that type of information. So just a tip, try to go ahead and make sure that that's black and white, and making sure that it's Twain compliant so you can get into your document management system and watch the size of the documents. If there's something over 5 megabytes, just be prepared that it's going to take a long time to get up to the Intuit server. And it's all dependent on your internet speed at work as well. So another quick tip is maybe your internet speed at work. You want to check on that. The tax import dramatically reduces the time spent manually. I can pretty much vouch that it should save anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes per tax return. Use the pre-import screen. Very important. Why not catch those 5 to 10% errors right up front before you import them? And then the missing data utility is again, a great team tool that's across the board that you can collaborate with your clients online and through the email process for missing information, and internal review notes for your team. Then use the Power Research tool, like I made the example of the veterinarian, to go ahead and attach research to tax returns where you're on the fence or you have a gray position that you're taking with the tax client in front of you for further documentation if they so choose to come back and question, or if they have an audit that's on their hands, you have that documentation already in there. So those are the Accelerator tips, and this was the presentation, and I just want to thank Zach, Tracy, for putting this together and helping me out and presenting this today, and thanking Intuit for coming up with an excellent tool for us to become more efficient and enjoying our busy season a little bit more than what we did in the past, where we were very manual intensive in putting this information in. So I want to thank everybody, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. And we actually had a few questions about people asking about the portal that you use. Do you think that you could give them a little bit more detail on that?
Yes, we use SecureDrawer, and that's a offering by eFile Cabinet, and we certainly are available to demo that for you at no obligation to you if you'd like to contact us afterwards. We'd appreciate the opportunity to show you that. Now, there's other portals out there, obviously, that you can also utilize and you can do a search on. The one reason why we're with SecureDrawer, though, is because of security reasons. We want to make sure that the data transfer that we're dealing with, we have Social Security numbers, date of births, and bank routing information that's being transferred via the internet or through a secure portal. And we wanted to assure ourselves as a CPA firm that it was secure, and this is all HIPAA, FINRA, SAS 70, and the new SOX compliant portal that we selected just because of that fact. And when you do look at a portal, you want to make sure that they have some type of guarantee or insurance on privacy and on protection of personal information. Does that help, Tracy?
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And something else that you mentioned that a lot of people had some interest in, and I think it's a really great idea, is the technology fee. And a lot of folks were asking how you kind of present that and how you determine the pricing.
Well, I know I'm a businessman and an entrepreneur, so I know if my secure drawer is costing me $1,000 a year, let's say, to go ahead and just buy the software, and then I'm going to have another $1,000 of labor and training in how to utilize it, and I have 700 clients that are interested in it at $10 a year, that's how I sort of determine that price, and that is to make sure that I'm not only covering my costs but making a return on my investment as far as including that into our fee structure and it's worth it. It's well worth it for the client. We have very little backlash or any type of comments that are coming from our clients saying the portal's too expensive. In fact, they see it as an asset to them because they have secure access to their financial information 24/7 from any device, including a cell phone, iPad. You can go online on your desktop or laptop. You can even be at your banker and going through the financing process and saying, I need 3 years of your last year's tax return. And if that client so chooses to share the password and their username on SecureDrawer, they can so do that at the bank and download it right there at that time of finance. That's where the value and how I came up with the price. It could be higher, I suppose.
And then, let me see here. Just want to try and pick a few. I know we don't have much time. Let me see here. Somebody mentioned that you were talking about an XCM or XEM for managing
workflow.
I apologize. Yes, exactly.
That's fine. The great thing about Intuit is they're great software providers, and you're coming a long way in onboarding and helping individuals utilize the software that you're offering. There's still a large need and a large opportunity for other providers to provide workflow for small firms and how they track information through the firms. XEM came out with a workflow tool that we're looking at for next year. Right now we do have a workflow tool, but it's in-house and it's not live and it's not really available for all of our team members. XEM, like other companies, is offering a workflow solution for the small CPA firm at a moderate price to track workflow from start to finish, from the scanning documents coming in to delivering the final product through the portal. They do have a tracking mechanism available now for that.
Great.
I'm not saying that they're the only one. I'm just saying that that's a company like that that's out there. So the onboarding and the usability of the software is as good as the workflow that is around it. If you don't have any organization around it, then you're not going to get what you have out of the software. Quick example, 20-person CPA firm utilizes document import, has a great time with it, same with document research. 10 miles down the road, another 20-person firm has a complete disastrous tax season and aborts the import and the research. Well, it's hardware, software, and people. So what happened in those two environments, and why did you get two dramatically different results? And I do believe it's workflow and how the people approached it.
Great. Now, I know that we're getting towards the end of the session, and I know that you were going to talk about just some next steps for people that want to learn some more information about tax import after they leave today's session.
Yes.
And if you want to show those, that would be great. I know a lot of people did ask during the session about the live demonstration, and I will tell you that in order to attend, I do a weekly demonstration, 2 a week for LaCert and 2 a week for Pro Series. So if one of those times meets your schedule, you can attend that. The link is www.taximportwebinar.com, and I'll go ahead and just send that out in just a moment. But that's just to let you know if you wanted to attend that session.
Okay, and here's the next steps. If you wanted to take a step-by-step tour of tax import, Tracy, now that you're on the line, maybe you could just, I think this is within within Pro Series or LaCert, but it should be in the same area under the import tab in both programs. And Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're exactly right. It's actually it's really wonderful. So if you wanted a guideline just for every step that you'd go through as you go through tax import, this is a great just click-by-click tour where it'll show you every step that you would take as you go through the process. And you can access that from the import menu within Pro Series and Lucert. It's located in the same place, and you can always click on that. And as you get to the end, that'll also give you the link to additional information to help you as you want to learn more.
Okay. So everybody that's attending, you can certainly go to your import tab in both Lucert and Pro Series, and you can find where to find more information on that. I guess I'm going to just go through these next steps here. For questions, call 1-800-200-7599 for pricing and information. There's a little bit of pricing difference between Lucert and Pro Series, but it's minimal. And for the value that this is providing our firm, it was well worth the investment in this type of technology. And this is where it's all going, folks. It's not going to be paper. It's going to be electronic documents, and it's going from actually accessibility to connecting. And what I mean by that is there's more and more connected services coming down the road, and that's what your clients are going to want and they're going to be hopeful for in CPA, a tax preparer, a tax professional, or EA out there in the marketplace. And then you want to hit option 2, by the way, on that 1-800 number for more information. And I want to, again, thank everybody at Intuit for everybody putting this together, and especially thanking the attendees and the audience for allowing me to present on this awesome add-on by Intuit today. I want to thank you very much for everything, and have an enjoyable afternoon.